Once a cheat, always a cheat. Cliche? I don't think so, more like an axiom. And yet there are still some poor, weak-minded, lovesick idiots who believe that their particular cheater is different from everyone else. Worst of all, I belong to this group of people who are in for as much disappointment as they will allow before they step forward and take action. You'd think I wasn't playing with a full deck. I'm Janet Monroe. The cheater in my world is Luther Monroe, my husband. This is the third time I've caught him. I've never been a baseball fan, but 3 strikes and you're out is what it's all about. Luther is a good man. He's a good man when he's sober. When he drinks too much, he's usually a good man. He rarely drinks too much. The problem with usually and rarely is that they don't go together with never. There is another characteristic of my dear husband. He likes to dominate my submissive. I'm not talking about whips and bondage. At least I don't think so. Most of all, he likes to make demands on me and make me submit. You see, taking me rather than loving me. I just don't like that. That's probably why I forgave Luther both times, although to say I forgave him is just saying. He got himself into the situation and found a woman who liked his aggressiveness. He was really remorseful. He drank too much, and this woman got so involved with him that he weakened. That will never happen again. I was breastfeeding our 18-month-old daughter. We were trying for a second child. I put my career on hold for 6 to 8 years because we wanted children. I didn't give it much thought, but when my husband turned out to be a cheater, I could have been confused. Maybe it's different for others, but a big loss for me was discovering that my husband thinks I would see him as a victim. Perhaps he thinks I chewed off a few pieces of paint as a child. A few cocktails, a girl shaking her tail in his face, and he just can't help it. Stupidity. He wanted to victimize himself and let it happen. I get mad at friends who say they get on the scale and find they're 13 pounds overweight. Bullshit. They weigh exactly what they want to weigh. Junk food doesn't take away your brains. It adds to your ass. So I have a husband who is going to go where he doesn't belong, drink more than his libido can handle, give in to his urges, and compensate with regret. I'm the one who's going to regret if I don't prepare myself for what I need to do the next time he regrets. I'm not one of his inflatable beauties, but this jackass thinks is an oxymoron, that I am. I called my former employer and started negotiating to get back to the job I would have had if I hadn't gone on vacation. Understandably, they were reluctant, but after some negotiation we came to this understanding. Over the next 2 years, I would get my MBA and take on a few development projects for an extremely low salary. It was a chance to prove and improve myself and get a more serious job. It took almost 4 months before I was able to enroll in the executive MBA program at our city's state university. Classes were on Tuesdays and Thursdays, every semester for 2 years. I had to find daycare for our daughter Sarah. This hurt me the most. Because of my husband's infidelity with some submissive whore, I was forced to put part of my daughter's formative years in the hands of a stranger. I found a woman who had a degree in child psychology and wanted to open a small daycare center in her home. She thought she could look after 6 to 8 children. She now had 3. Sarah was 4. I could pick Sarah up, mostly on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and leave her at my convenience. I could pick her up any time before 6 p.m. It was a perfect fit. A little over a year later, the jerk, as I now call my husband, cheated again. I had about a year left to finish university, go back to work and get rid of him. This time, there was no confession, no feigned grief, just her snarkiness at him. Then I decided not to confess my indiscretion. A couple weeks later, out of the blue, I tightened my warning against further infidelity. I told him that if I caught him again, I would castrate him. He was puzzled. What does that mean? Why talk about it? He thought he was being reasonable. I looked at him. The light was on, but no one was home. A month passed. It was an ordinary morning. Luther said, "Say, I'll be back a little late tonight. I have a business dinner." Business dinners on Wednesdays were becoming the norm for dumb fuck. He had to stay home with Sarah on Tuesday and Thursday nights because I was taking 2 extra classes in the evening executive MBA program. All the students except me worked full-time during the day. "What time will you be home?" I was sure he had nothing better to do than hang around doing nothing. But it would be a few more months before I could get everything I wanted. "Not too late, around 9 or 10 o'clock. What's the name and where is Sarah's daycare center?" Sarah had been going there for over a year now. In all that time, he had never once had to find out the name or location, and now it was a question. I wondered why. I swallowed my question, smiled, and answered. Barnett's, 13,129 145th Street. It must be written in the cheater's handbook that your spouse has only one oar in the water, when in fact cheaters are usually sharp as marble. Sorry for mixing metaphors, I was just thinking about it, and suddenly, I'm not all there. Okay, thanks. It occurred to me that I should know that. He walked out of the kitchen toward the bedroom. I was working in the kitchen. I know he didn't expect me to follow him, but I peeked around the corner. He reached into the inside pocket of his coat and pulled out a cell phone. The phone had a green case. I walked back into the kitchen. He carries his phone in his pants pocket. It has a black case. This corrupt bastard has two cell phones. He needs daycare info for his new girlfriend, or one of them. Well, that could be useful. I need to take a look at that cell phone. Dumbass came back into the kitchen. We exchanged the usual goodbye kiss, and he left. I had everything ready. It was time to get Sarah up and feed her breakfast. For the first time, I was sure I was going to get revenge on this dumbass. It was a war of wits and only one of us was armed. I was reading about segmenting markets when the phone rang. I hate calling landlines. The caller ID says, Kathy Barnett. And I answer, Kathy, what a pleasant surprise. How are you? Better, Janet, thanks to you. Having two little ones helps a lot. And from such a famous family, too. Well, that fool didn't waste any time. I don't want Kathy to know that I have no idea what she's talking about. Well, or who she's talking about. A local celebrity, I guess. I decide to try it in the dark. Maybe it'll prime the pump. You've got to be kidding me. Ron Ward has written 3 bestsellers. He may not have been famous 6 months ago, but he's a national figure now. I'm behind the times. I haven't read anything not related to marketing or finance in a year. Truth be told, my husband works side by side with his wife. Neither of us knew who she was married to. Oh, so you don't know Mr. Ward? Kathy became concerned. No, I haven't had the pleasure. I'm sure Luther hasn't either. He would be sure to mention it. I was hoping you'd introduce us. Well, now perhaps I can introduce you. He's the primary caregiver for the children in the family. His wife is an executive at some technology company, but you said you knew her. A first-class whore who's also a dumbass. I'll look forward to meeting him. She thanked me again for the recommendation. I was struck by a happy coincidence. Mr. Ron Ward was in the same circumstances as I was, though perhaps not yet aware of it. He had recently become rich, had become the primary caregiver, and was about to be abused in divorce court. If he plays along, he'll make a great partner. That's the third strike against dumbass. Ron Ward. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times, it was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness, it was the age of faith, it was the age of disbelief, it was the season of light, it was the season of darkness, it was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. I'm Ron Ward, and I wish I had written those words, not Charles Dickens. I was running them through my head because they fit my life at the moment. Until a few months ago, I was a financial analyst and part-time writer. My third novel, Lucky Fiction, became a #1 bestseller. Shortly thereafter, sales of my first 2 novels also skyrocketed. The novel was a James Bond-style spy thriller. The villain was an unscrupulous, wealthy, and well-connected hedge fund manager. Through careful study, he became an expert on how news affects stock and commodity prices. Instead of waiting for news and reacting to it like everyone else, he developed ways to spread false reports in ways that gave them the appearance of credibility. He made huge financial moves before the false reports came out, and when the rest of the financial world followed, he made profits before the false bubble he created burst. He made money hand to mouth until the unthinkable happened. His rumors came true. He predicted that a third world dictator would stop mining in his country by cutting off the flow of rare earth materials. The dictator read the story, liked the power he could gain, and stopped mining. The villain then saw an opportunity to create a reaction to the dictator's actions that would lead to world chaos. Fortunately, before the world economy collapsed, the hero spy caught the villain and wrote some rumors that brought the world back from the brink, as he always did. This was the first time I used the concept of fictional writing creating real events, and it wouldn't be the last. My success in book sales was just beginning. I was suddenly being contacted by all sorts of people who wanted to make the book into a movie, and those who wanted to represent me, taking most of my income so others wouldn't take most of my income, or so it seemed to me. Of course, those were the best of times, but they were also the worst of times. Someone said that nothing brings success like success. I can only assume that person has never been successful. Success messes up life a lot. Things are changing. Sure, you can get a wider seat on an airplane, but suddenly there are demands to fly everywhere and all the time. People are looking for you. No one will leave you alone. You've captured the essence. All these changes have affected my marriage. Well, I'm not sure about that. Some things have been hard on my marriage. My wife Maureen is organized and logical. She and a few of her college friends joined a new technology company right out of college. They became a great team. Within a few years, her group was essentially running a company that had grown more than 20 times in that time. I know my success changed her view of order, but it seems to be more than that. Maureen and I have two beautiful children. Our oldest, Ben, is 3 years old, and his little sister, Andrea, will be 2 in 3 months. Maureen is Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Widgets Inc. She took a 2-year leave of absence to have our children. Ben was born the day her leave started, and 6 months after Andrea was born, she went back to work. I stayed home with the kids. Maureen's spontaneity was close to zero. She liked that I was working a stable job with a small income and dreaming of being a writer. This guy could reliably stay home with the kids and do what he was told. I asked Maureen if she knew anyone who used daycare. I was taken aback, she said incredulously. It's none of our business. The children need us. Pardon me for saying so, but you're being rather generous in using us in relation to yourself, don't you think? No, I don't think so, and how dare you? We had an agreement. Our lives worked out so we could have kids and you would stay home with them. And now, you want to gallivant. I think the lady doth protest too much. Hamlet. The periodic meetings and monthly book launches can hardly be called chatter. Maureen, calm down. I'm hardly engaging in gallimania. I spend most of my day with our children. What about your sudden change in work habits? Do you spend every evening or twice a week at some extracurricular activity? I know she values stability, but from a while on that meant my stability too. She could do whatever she wanted. Don't you dare throw that in my face. This isn't about me. This is about you not honoring your commitments. I'm not going to do that to you. You have something else in mind, and we're not going to get there by pestering me. I made my point. The argument stopped, and a few minutes later she gave me the name of the daycare center. Thanks to Kathy Barnett, I fell in love with Barnett Daycare. She had a young child and wanted to be a mother, but she needed to make a living. She studied child psychology and decided to open an exclusive daycare center to accomplish both goals. Our two quickly settled into her daycare center. I really hated leaving my children behind, but she was so good that it was almost painless. That was until the day I left them and met Janet Monroe. I dropped the kids off and was about to walk back to the car when a woman approached us. Ron Ward? This is so great, the fans recognize me. Yes, that's me. Thank you for reading my books. Oh, I'm sorry I didn't finish reading. But my name is Janet Monroe. I think we need to talk. Oh shit, how embarrassing. Nothing like being so self-sufficient to think that the people who fit in are fans. Can I ask what you want to talk about? She looked down at her feet. Or rather, she looked down. The bust line hadn't allowed her to see her legs probably since grammar school. I wish we could talk privately and get to know each other a little, but on second thought, if I were you, I'd want to know why a stranger would want to talk. I can't put it any simpler than that. My husband and your wife are having an affair. I sighed. So that's what it is. She looked puzzled. I'm sorry, what's the matter? Strange behavior. Fighting where we have nothing to fight about. More evenings out of the house. A whole list of things. And then there's the attacks on me for shirking my responsibilities by putting my children in the care of strangers. Oh, you're probably wondering how I know. Well, obviously you're more informed than I am. I have to admit I'm missing a couple picnic sandwiches. She grinned. Once upon a time, I wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed either. Then one day, a dumbass, by the way, that's my husband's name, dumbass, though some people call him Luther. And then one day, a month or so ago, this dumbass asked me how we were going to take care of the baby. I interrupted her. I knew it. I asked my obviously promiscuous wife if she knew where to watch the baby, and not 10 minutes later she gave me a name. She tried to keep me in the dark, but it allowed her to shed some light. Janet was smiling now. That's how they got caught. As far as I can tell, none of their elevators go to the top floor. Oh, that's a good point, as is the fact that their river doesn't flow all the way to the sea. I can't say about your wife, but I know that if that dumbass's brains were dynamite, he wouldn't be able to blow his nose. We both chuckled. Even stupidity helps in situations like this. Janet continued, I discovered that this jerk had a secret cell phone when he asked me where our daughter goes to preschool. She's been going there for over a year now, and all of a sudden he doesn't care where she is. Well, obviously we need to talk. I'm on my way to a book launch. Sorry, that sounds ostentatious. Not really. It's impressive. I'm reading a book and I'd like you to sign mine as well. How about tomorrow? Well, I usually stay home with Sarah. You only have one? I have two. Bring Sarah to my house for a date. I'd like my wife to catch us together with the little ones. She smiled broadly. Oh, you're just mean. I'm going to like you a lot. What time is it? Give me your address. I gave it and we agreed. Before we parted, she made me promise not to say anything to Maureen until we had arranged a date. Janet Monroe. When I first saw Ron Ward, I awed. Wow, he's good looking, but he looks serious. The sparkle in his eyes when he suggested we meet at his house didn't justify that calm look. He showed no emotion at all. When he found out about the affair, it was as if he had solved a puzzle. Shouldn't there have been some glimmer of anger or disappointment? Maybe he just doesn't show any emotion. I considered telling the goon that I was going to Ward's with Sarah, but then I changed my mind. I didn't want him to know what I knew and what I thought about it until I had my pound of flesh. And unlike Shylock from The Merchant of Venice, I was entitled to the blood that came with it. Dumbass was going to work. I made his usual toast and coffee and got busy getting ready to meet Sarah. Are you taking Sarah to daycare today? No, we'll be together all day today, but we're going for a walk. Let's see how curious he is. Oh, that's nice. Have fun. And he's out the door. There is a correlation between curiosity and intelligence. He showed no curiosity. Dumbass was clearly missing a few pickles in a jar. Sarah was all excited. Are we going to miss Dunlaps? No, honey, not today. But we are going to see some of your friends. She looked pleased. Her third birthday was almost upon her. At least all the trauma of the changing family structure had to pass before she would begin to become aware of her surroundings. Putting a baby in a car seat and packing the essentials for a few hours away from home is about the same as what pioneers must have experienced loading a covered wagon. I packed the essentials. Then Sarah got into her car seat. Unless we needed rattlesnake serum, we were ready to face the world. 30 minutes later, we were at the Ward's house. It was a nice suburban house, large yard, nice lawn and garden. Apparently, Ward's was doing well even before his novel started selling. I was getting out of the car when Ron showed up with a beautiful 2-year-old in his arms. I called out to Sarah and we turned toward them. Ron turned to Sarah. What a little beauty. What's your name? She turned her head, still a little shy. Andrea, Mommy. When Sarah said this, Andrea turned and smiled broadly. Instantly, the shyness of both of them disappeared. Ron looked into my car. I'd say you've had enough for the morning. He grinned stupidly. You should see what it looks like for 2 people. They should provide a Sherpa or Schlepper with those regalia. Sherpa or Schlepper, you have to be a writer. That brought a proud smile. Let's go to the house. You tell me what you need and I'll carry it, and you look after the trio. I'll be falsely proud, but you know who gets more. I brought her bed. She can sleep with Ben. We just bought him a bigger bed. Besides, people in our families are used to sleeping together. Though in the case of the others, it's euphemistic. Sleeping together. I want that, Sarah said. Ron liked Sarah's words and said, Oh, little jugs and big ears, how shall I put it? I like the conversations that can come out of it, though. Well, that's what we want to talk about. We'll get to the main thing before it's bedtime. Something must remain a mystery until we get our business sorted out. Ducks? Where? Sarah liked the literal meaning better at this age. Ron set up the family playroom. There wasn't much for the little ones to reach for, and the 30-somethings had soft toys. Sarah and Ben were almost the same age, and all 3 were used to being together. They were a pleasure to watch. The two Rons seemed more interested in Sarah playing with their toys than worrying about their treasures being looted. Geez, I'm even kind of sad about this. What? He asked with obvious curiosity. Sharing is a sign of love. There's a lot of it around here. It's a shame that some people don't know boundaries in their sharing. Let me button up your car and we'll explore this. Ron returned and found the three of them crawling around two toy trucks and a teddy bear. There was some kind of story connected to the trucks and the bear, and we were barely in the background. Thank you for coming. It looks like you're off to a good start. But since the three on the floor seem to be hearing strange words here and there, let's talk about the movie we saw starring Daniel and Wilma. Tell me, are they in love or just having fun? Oh, it was a good movie. The audience really learned a lot when they found Daniel's cell phone. It revealed a love story. I saw emotion in Ron for the first time. The love story hurt him, and he wasn't afraid to show it. Ron, I can see how you're reacting to this movie. We should hold off on discussing it, don't you think? Yes, but if you want to, tell me about it and ignore how excited it made me. I can wait on that part of our conversation. I shrugged. Like most love stories, it talks about marriage. But she has two pet goldfish and she wants full custody of them. Right now, a man is taking care of them, and she's afraid he won't give them up. She's right about that, he growled. What's wrong, Daddy? Young Andrea asked. Daddy's just being silly. I'm sorry if I'm being too loud. We're talking about a movie, an adult movie. There's a bad man. As his voice relaxed, his daughter stopped paying attention to his words and went back to playing before he finished his sentence. So he didn't. Well, this proves that it's not so much what I say that matters, but the emotion. He laughed and said playfully, I'm going to strangle that whore. The young men didn't react in any way. Well, the movie turned out so well because the one telling the story was the mastermind. Her plan called for revenge on the happy couple. I started giggling when it was over. I looked at Ron and said, the happy voices and the story lifted my spirits. His eyes lit up. It would be interesting to try writing about saying one thing and meaning another. The fire left his eyes. He took on an impassive expression and said lightly, but we're here to talk about movies. I don't think her plan will come to fruition. Why not? Well, her lover has a fish too. He doesn't mind keeping that fish and claims he'd be happy to have two new ones. But tell me, do you know anyone who is willing to give up his goldfish and yet is happy to get a new one? No, I don't. We talked like that for a while. We were getting pretty good at it. The key is neutral tones. They are white noise to the very young. The biggest problem came when he asked if I remembered why the story was written. I told him that in her old home everyone loved her and treated her like a princess. I should not have used the word princess in the presence of two young ladies. Both wanted to know about this princess. I promised I would read the story later, which bought me some time. Then this shrew, as she was now called, discovered that rough handling, rough conjugation, and strong dialogue during the exercice was what was of value to her. My description made Ron laugh out loud. You could try writing on your own. I'm sure such lessons have never been described more kindly. Mine, came a voice from the floor. Soon afterward, there was a general commotion. But before it increased, we got everyone into Ben's bed. They fell asleep instantly. Now we could talk. Ron, I'm so sorry we had to go through that. No, you know it was the best way to do it. Getting news like that in Happy Talk code isn't so bad. Well, it's bad, but it's probably better than details like gross conjugation. He chuckled. I explained Luther's first and second time, as well as my threat. Now that dumbass doesn't think I'm being serious, but he's dumber than a box of rocks. Ron looked at me with a serious expression. And that's why you take him for granted? Puns aside, he'll be sorry yet. Well, apologizing for you would seem to entail trauma for him. I'm not sure I'm looking at jail time for that. Ron, you don't have to get revenge on me. Revenge is not inviting them over for tea and crumpets, and when they reach for a second crumpet saying, no, no, this is my revenge, no second crumpets for you. He laughed. That's what I want. I want that bitch to get what she deserves, which is nothing. But if I get divorced, she'll prosper, and I'll be totally screwed. Lose Ben and Andrea. I don't want that. If you can tell me how revenge will make me a better person, I'm in. It's a challenge, but not as big as you think. Dumbass has strong qualities we can count on. For example, he likes to chase skirts. He can't help it, and he's getting worse. Second, he gets worse and worse when he drinks alcohol. Ron thought for a moment, then said, "So if my wife catches this dumbass with another woman and gets back at him, it would have to be done in such a disgusting way that she would be left on the losing end. The jerk would get his punishment, and we would live happily ever after. A crime of passion planned by people who have no part in it. You should write fiction, though a story like that would be hard for people to believe. With a dumbass, it's simple. He wanders around depriving some village of an idiot. The more he drinks, the more he drinks." Pecker is an interesting choice of terms, but understandable. So getting him into bed with the second alternative isn't a problem. Our problem is that Maureen isn't set on revenge. She just needs encouragement. Does she read your books? Not so much lately, but it's an important part of my process. I'm sure I can encourage her again. What do I write about? Ron Ward, what a woman. I don't remember meeting anyone like her. Janet is warm and caring. She is intelligent and witty. We found a common ground. We are close, closer than having common cheating spouses would suggest. Our connection is in who we are. We are alike in spirit. I'm curious. Why am I thinking about her? She suggested a way to get back at our cheating spouses. It's chilling, but my thoughts of her are the opposite. Why did Maureen lose her way? My connection with Maureen is practical. We became lovers because we were good together. We were comfortable, we were compatible. Boring. I never thought of it that way. I liked that we were so predictable. We dated and discovered that we wanted the same things, that we were both smart and ambitious. And the more we learned about each other, the more obvious it became that we should get married. Could Janet and I really be so cunning as to let a dullard and a whore self-destruct? Are we really that wise? Or, better yet, are they that stupid? Janet knows Luther. She says he has two predictable traits, and Maureen is predictable too. Can we capitalize on that predictability? Janet and I would never be that predictable. Janet calls herself a planner. I would call her an innovator. Maureen pulls tasks together. To her, it's a plan. She went on vacation, had her son, got pregnant as fast as she could. As soon as her daughter could go without food for 9 hours, Maureen went back to work. Completing one assignment after another, she never became a mother. Rather, she had 2 children. I stopped myself. My thoughts scattered in all directions, which is what I do when I create. I write down my thoughts and then sort them. What makes me jump from one thought to the next? Just a few hours spent with Janet gave me an idea of what happiness looks like. She wanted revenge. But our meeting wasn't about revenge. She knew she was giving the worst news imaginable. She was more concerned about how that news would affect me than she was about me becoming her accomplice. It was further complicated by the fact that I had to find a clever way to break the news in front of 3 toddlers. There was a kind of lightness to it. A humanity shown to me and the children. Janet had a purpose. More than a purpose, it was her purpose, her holy grail. And at the same time, she cared about me, a stranger. Maureen and I had never shared that kind of humanity. Passion? Yes. Partnership? Yes. Love? I suppose we did. But real caring? Not really. Maybe Maureen had found it in Luther? I leaned back in my chair and stared into the void. Maybe I was wrong. If I felt something related after only a couple hours, maybe it was okay. Maybe Maureen just got on. Bullshit. I didn't entertain Janet, and I don't intend to. I'm not conspiring with her to take our children away from Maureen. I'm conspiring with Janet to prevent Maureen from intentionally hurting me. I want to think of my wife as the person I thought I married. Either she's changed or I misunderstood her, but she's not the person I thought I married. I pride myself on my prudence. I see the virtue in being prudent. Perhaps that's how I want to live my life, but right now, if I'm prudent, I'll be nailed to the wall. I have to set myself up to be unreasonable. Not just unreasonable, but unreasonable to the extreme. Or I'll get run over. My thoughts are still bouncing around like spit in a hot frying pan. I may be the one missing a few slices for the loaf. It's time to start planning. Or maybe better said, plotting. I asked what I should write about. Janet's advice was to make lovers paranoid for fear of exposure and fear of retribution. I decided to write about a jealous husband. I didn't elaborate on why he was jealous, skipping ahead in the plot outline to his plan to shoot his wife and frame it as a botched robbery. I wrote a couple thousand words and emailed them to Janet, as we'd gotten into the habit of doing. I asked her what she thought of what I had ventured to write. As is her custom, she read it, in some cases several times, and then we discussed it. Janet Monroe. Ron Ward understands this. Every time we get together, he is so thoughtful of me and Sarah. He's also quietly carrying out our plan. After our first meeting, he started writing a murder mystery. His wife told him it was going nowhere, that he couldn't create sinister characters. There was no mood to make readers believe that this jealous husband could kill his spouse. That was 2 weeks ago. Today is Friday. Dumbass is always home on Fridays. The difficulty with these evenings was that he usually wanted to make love. I usually held my nose and joined him. Tonight he grilled steaks, potatoes, and corn cobs. We had count 'em, two bottles of Silver Oak Cabernet. It's an extraordinary wine, but I knew he was trying to get me to do something. We were sipping the last wine and he looked at me and said, "I think I'm going to buy a gun." I almost spat my wine out at him. "You're a romantic devil. You know how to set the mood." "No, I'm serious. This is a dangerous world. We have to protect ourselves." "Luther, I have no idea what you're talking about. There's no theft or vandalism in this neighborhood. I'd say guns might only be needed if some jealous husband goes on a rampage. I'm not worried about that, are you?" He turned slightly green and cleared his throat. Anyone who hadn't been suspicious before would have become suspicious after such a demonstration. Since I knew about his affair and was the source of his paranoia, I had no choice but to laugh in his face. "Did you choke on your wine?" I innocently asked. Yes, I choked." "Luther, I hate to say this, but you're so dumb that if you threw yourself on the ground, you'd miss. You don't know how to handle a weapon. Why don't we quit drinking and go to bed?" Telling a woman you're buying a gun and then inviting her to bed, his cornbread still soft in the middle. I'll admit, the wine had an effect on me. Besides, he always passed out after a quick and not-so-pleasant session, and afterwards I could get up and check his second cell phone. "Why not, you old charmer?" We headed for the bedroom. Not 15 minutes later, he was snoring and I was pulling out his cell phone. My dear hubby reminded me a lot of Einstein. By this point, they were both dead. He had password protected his second cell phone, the same password as the first. Dumbass and his room temperature IQ. I opened the phone and found there a steady stream of messages about jealous husbands and gun purchases. Maureen was scared to death of guns, and Dumbass offered to buy her a stun gun, yes, with a laser sight, for $400. She asked him to buy it. He asked her for $400. Adorable. A new message came in. "You were great yesterday. When can we do it again?" The message was from RB, clearly not Maureen Ward. Dumbass is already cheating on his future spouse. I knew it was only a matter of time. Ron Ward. I was starting to like our little baby dates on Mondays and Wednesdays. It was becoming a game to speak in a tone of voice that would not arouse the children's suspicions or give them verbal clues that might provoke them. Janet was telling me about a book she was reading. The point is boring. She tried a new twist, apparently saying the opposite. It has a lot of joy in it. A man named Dumb A decides to arm himself with his bedside table and encourages his round-heeled friend to do the same. "Really?" I muttered back. "And to put it the other way around, how would he feel about nuggets?" I looked down. The two young ladies weren't happy with Ben. He just doesn't play with dolls. It didn't look like they were listening to us. "Ben, why don't you get that truck you love and let the girls have fun with the dolls?" Ben took this with mixed feelings. He knew he really did like the truck better, but torturing his sister and her friend was still better. However, after taking one look at me, he decided that the torment was over for the day and moved toward the truck. "Yeah, fluffy as a bug in a rug. But she's not herself. He's going to buy her an electric scooter. Well, with your money." "Oh, I like that," I said, trying to feign disappointment. It's so much fun learning to say one thing and look like you're saying something else. But you haven't heard the best part yet. Dumbass A has not one, but two new horizontal penises. Now he's cheating in both the game he's playing and the next game he has on his schedule. "It's bad to cheat, Mommy." "You're very right, you would never cheat, would you?" "No, I'm a good girl." Sarah made a satisfied look and went back to her game. The fact that she knows that word says a lot about the kind of house she comes from. Janet said it carelessly, but you could see in her eyes that she meant it and it hurt her. I spoke in a neutral tone. I was close to despair. I had no idea how this story was going to end. Janet looked at me, then smiled widely. I told you. Some things are as predictable as the sunrise. Well, the table is set, but how do we get the right players in place? Admittedly, that's not such a guarantee. But I'm not just hopeful, I'm almost certain. She had a knack for talking nonstop about everything in the world. Round Heels will be in her quarters. How will her partner know to send her to find Silent A? She hesitated and apparently couldn't find a cute way to get her point across. We need to wait until bedtime. I looked back at the three of them, and they hissed. We talked to the kids, and after a few minutes, they all wanted to lie down for a few minutes. We put them down and went back to the family room. Turns out Slut-2 is a real perv. That set me up with a great plan. I laughed. What's so funny? She asked. That's the first thing out of your mouth in a while where your thoughts, emotions, and tone matched. Whatever, lay out your plan. This fool will be home at 6. Brandy will be waiting for me there. He has a weakness for alcohol, and Brandy overwhelms him. By the time we finish dinner, he'll be ready. Ready? I asked in anticipation. I'll send Slut2 a message telling her to be on our front porch naked at 8:30. In that message, I will demand that she send a return message at 7:30 asking to be on the porch naked at 8:30. The outgoing message I will erase. I was impressed. Brilliant. Slut-2 won't come early. She knows she'll be forced to stand naked on the porch if she does. You'll be able to leave after the big fight, and he'll be glad you did. Right. Sometime before 7:30, I'll let this dumbass know what I know about his women. I'll tell him I'm done. I've arranged for Sarah to be at daycare that evening. While we're arguing, he'll figure it out. I could say, one of your mistresses, don't dare take her. I think that was a good line. You say he's getting belligerent. Then he picks up the phone and realizes he's in for a surprise. An idiot would have the sense to wonder why, in the midst of an argument with his wife, a whore offers to show up at his house naked. A sober dumbass might wonder about that, but a drunk would just be eager for me to leave. When he's drunk on brandy, it'll be like falling out of a stupid tree and hitting all the branches on the way down. I'll pack up and be on my way by 8:15 or 8:20. If I'm lucky, I'll be able to grab his phone in time to take him with me. What if she doesn't answer the text? I'll improvise, but I bet she'll answer. She's a piece of work. So you leave, and a few minutes later there's a knock on his door. What if the dumbass opens the door and whore-2 says she showed up on orders? I've thought about that. He'll be drunk. It doesn't matter what she says. It's a picture. You say he never misses a text. What if he notices you took his phone? I was thinking the same thing. He'll just go crazy to get me out before she gets here. It's not like you haven't seen his drunken behavior. Then what? I'll drive to your house. I'll knock on the front door and introduce you to whore-1. You'll tell her to get out and I'll give her the key to the house. The two of us will make her run. She won't need a map to tell her where to go. I was pleased. This should work. I just nodded in agreement. When she leaves, I'll go get Sarah and we can wait for the police. The police? Sure. If there's trouble and someone gets hurt, the crooks will say it's all our fault. We conspired to get them to do what they're going to do. For my murder mystery, I studied several books on conspiracy. When two people agree to commit a crime, they are guilty of conspiracy, even if they never committed it. You and I never planned a crime. Absolutely not. We planned to get three crooks together in one room. What they would do could have even been predicted, but it wasn't part of our plans. Revenge. Janet Monroe. I would compare it to baking. You mix the ingredients, preheat the oven, put everything together, and the next thing you know, it's automatic. I was glad it was almost over. By plotting the death of another, you poison yourself. So why do it? Not plotting their demise is much worse. The dumbass continued to deceive, and I smiled. It wasn't my fault he couldn't see the schadenfreude in that smile. What hurt me the most was that I got what I deserved. From the very first time he confessed, I knew this day would come. It was my choice to end things on my terms. The time that had passed was my own purgatory. Now my graduation was secured and I could proceed to finish the game. The ingredients were gathered and mixed, but I had never baked this cake before. What if it failed? My potential for success lay in the bad character of two sluts and one dumbass. How could that be? Could it be that I'm all foam and no beer? Ron Ward. Creativity is a gift. I have used it to keep my wife from committing a great injustice. I'm afraid I've crossed the line and now I'm doing the injustice myself. If Maureen is seriously injured or even killed today, what will I tell our children? On the other hand, if I did what I had been taught, I would lose my children. And who knows what evil she would tell them about me. I had a choice to make. Either be evil and keep my children safe, or be kind and allow myself to be harmed. The choice was obvious, just not easy. A knock on the door. We were enjoying a pleasant evening at home. Maureen wanted to indulge in some lovemaking, but I had to make sure we were dressed as we had a guest due at 9 o'clock that evening. Around 5, the doorbell rang. Maureen lay on top of me on the couch and said she would open it now. I squatted down next to her. She opened the door. She was greeted with the words, "You must be a whore." I pulled myself over to Maureen and looked at Janet. "Janet, what brings you here at this hour?" "Ron, do you know that your slut wife is having fun with my fool of a husband?" "What?" I tried to feign surprise. "Ron, don't listen to her. I have no idea what she's talking about." Janet reached into her pocket and pulled out her cell phone. Maureen's purse, which was hanging on a hook by the garage door, began to ring. I walked over to the purse, opened it, and discovered a second cell phone. I couldn't open it. "You have two cell phones, Maureen, and I can't open this one?" "Ron, I swear I don't have an affair." "Then open the cell phone." "I really shouldn't. Does it have secrets from work on it?" "Is that a question, Maureen, or a statement?" Janet spoke up. "You don't need to see her cell phone, Ron. That's all there is. Maybe it's not an affair and they're planning to get married. You're going to lose your kids." Janet and I decided to add this because I knew Maureen would hear it and be sure of my anger. Maureen decided it was time to take offense. "I'm sorry, Ron. It just happened that way. Of course I didn't mean for it to end this way. Maybe I should just leave." I almost smiled but caught myself thinking, "Pack up your stuff for a couple days and leave." She went upstairs to the bedroom. I closed the front door. I pointed to the family room. Janet handed me the house key and quietly walked away into the darkness. I stood in the foyer and waited. Not 15 minutes later, Maureen came down the stairs. She was crying and visibly shaking. The paranoia caused by my letter and the unexpected visit had thrown her off balance. I don't know if she thought Janet had left or if she had simply forgotten about her while she and I exchanged hurt and offended looks. "I'm going to file for divorce. I want custody of the kids," she declared. I reached out, took her wrist, raised it to chest level, turned it palm up, and put a key in it. "This is the key to your lover's house. Don't let the door hit you in the ass on your way out." "Did you hear what I said?" She was growing more determined. "Even better if you heard what I said. Get the hell out." "Can I have my phone, please?" "No, sue me. Get the hell out." Surprisingly, she turned around, grabbed her purse and wallet, and walked away. I was glad I grabbed her phone in time. I could make out that she had a stun gun. I heard the garage door go up and saw her car pull out and drive away. I closed the garage door and turned on the light in the family room. "What's new?" Janet asked with a hint of a smirk. "I don't have anything much. What about you?" "Well, you know, the same old stuff. Pimping for ex-husband with whore-2 and encouraging whore-1 to go and catch them." I burst out laughing. "Damn good plan so far. We'll see. Go get Sarah." And off she went. Janet Monroe. I picked up Sarah and brought her back. We set up his guest bedroom so that I could sleep on the double bed and Sarah could sleep on the big pillows. Not ideal, but it would do for a day or two. I was putting our new room in order when the doorbell rang. I looked for the clock and found it on the bedside table. 12:30. I was in wool pajamas and a light robe. I went to Ron's room. I had a baby monitor so I could hear Sarah sleeping. As I walked down the stairs, I found Ron and two what I realized were police detectives in the foyer. Ron was checking their credentials. "Janet, these are Detectives Collins and Gray." "Detectives, this is Janet Monroe." "Janet Monroe? Are you related to Luther Monroe?" "By marriage for some time yet. Why do you ask?" "Mr. Monroe was taken to the hospital. He was tasered and shot." "Bastard. Good for him." My voice was calm. "That's your husband, Mrs. Monroe. Aren't you curious about his condition?" "I know what condition he's in. He's a corrupt bastard who deserves all the horrors that will befall him." The detectives looked at each other, then made some notes. The silence was awkward and, I suspected, embarrassing. I looked at Ron, who was sitting with his hands folded in his lap, looking puzzled. The detectives lowered their heads. Ron winked at me. Detective Gray, who was questioning me, continued to look down. Detective Collins started with Ron. You don't seem very concerned, Mr. Ward. About what? Ron froze. About your wife, for one. She's obviously not worried about me. Why should I be concerned about her? You haven't been told anything about her. You've shown no concern or curiosity. I'm just sputtering, but I think it's because I have no curiosity or concern. What if I told you she was shot with a gun? Ron straightened to his full height. Look, what do you want from me? You two came in here flashing your badges and said you wanted to ask me something. You didn't tell me you came to inform me of my wife's injury and arrest. Now you want to know why I'm not worried. Now I'm worried about both of you. You're out of line. The detective treated this outburst as a trifle. What if I told you that your wife thinks you're responsible for all this carnage? You got me, Ron said and laughed. It was more like a giggle. So you admit it? The detective asked. Admit what? That you are the cause of the chaos that occurred at Mrs. Monroe's house tonight. I have never been in Mrs. Monroe's house. I've never met Mr. Ward. Why the hell, pardon the expression, am I responsible for this? Your wife says you made her do it. Ah, yes, my mind control ray. I had completely forgotten about that. Mr. Ward, this is a serious matter. This is a criminal investigation. I suggest you take it more seriously. The detective shook his finger in front of Ron's face. I have a better idea. If you have a serious investigation, take it seriously and talk to those involved. Ron jabbed his finger directly at the detective. We can arrest you, Mr. Ward. I can sue the city and you personally, detective. Both sat staring at each other. The silence was broken by Detective Gray. I think we took the wrong tact. Let me ask you, did you send your wife to the Monroe house knowing that Mr. Monroe would be there with another mistress? Of course, Ron and I said at the same time. And you don't see any problem with that? I intervened first. Look, we knew about their affair. My husband told his wife they were getting married. In the meantime, that cheating bastard is having fun with everything that floats by. I thought it would do that whore he, pointing to Ron, is married to good to know what she's getting into. Let's call it selfless service to the community. Did you give her a key to the house? The detective asked. Well, actually, I gave it to Ron, who gave it to her. Why did you do that? I don't need it anymore. She's about to marry a womanizer, so she might as well have it. You knew she'd use it tonight and catch Mr. Ward and his lover. The detective leaned forward as if about to prove a point. Did you know? No. I fervently hoped so. Look, I don't know what they or she told you, but it's simple. We hoped they would come face to face with their bad behavior. It did them good. Mrs. Ward says she bought the stun gun because of you. A glance at Ron. She bought it because Mr. Monroe wanted her to buy a gun and she hates guns, Ron said. How do you know that? It's written on his phone, I said, holding out my phone. We're going to need it. It's evidence. I held out my phone to him. I'd saved it in the cloud anyway. Mr. Ward, the detective said, your wife told us you wrote a story about a man who, as a writer, plans to kill his wife. Well, I'm just in the process of writing such a story. I'm an author. She also says she overheard you buying a shotgun. Who are you people, really? Overheard me buying a shotgun? From whom? Where? She must have heard me dictating to the computer. That's the point, isn't it? You're an author writing about an author planning to kill his wife. Your wife gets paranoid and buys a gun. You send her to her husband-to-be and she shoots him. Ron laughed. I hope you're taping this. You want me to feel bad because my wife, the cheating whore, has guilt because she's a cheating whore. That guilt makes her paranoid because her author husband is writing this article. Either her guilt or her paranoia is causing her to hurt her lover. And it's my fault, in her opinion, right? They didn't seem to want to answer that rhetorical question. After a pause, the second detective spoke. There's also the matter of Mr. Monroe's injury. Mrs. Monroe, Mrs. Ward told us that you promised to castrate your husband if you caught him again. Promised. The detective said, let me outline the scene for you if I may. Mrs. Ward entered the Monroe home using your key. She passed into the bedroom and found Mr. Monroe and Miss Morgan there on the bed. He was kneeling behind her. She was on her knees and lying face down on the bed. They were engaged in copulation. Mrs. Ward shrieked, grabbed a stun gun and shot Mr. Ward. I should say at the moment of joining Miss Morgan. Damn it, I knew she was capable of that. Janet's face reflected genuine joy. The detective looked at me and shook his head. The shock from the stun gun knocked out both Mr. Ward and Miss Morgan. Miss Morgan's arms were secured on either side of the headboard of the bed. They were loose enough that she couldn't use her hands. She regained consciousness and reached for the bedside table, where Mr. Monroe had placed the gun. Ron said, "Maureen was right. Ordinary people get in trouble with handguns." Miss Morgan found herself crushed by the weight of the unconscious Mr. Monroe and stunned by the indirect blow of the stun gun. She swung the butt of the gun at Mrs. Ward, who was standing by the bed at the time, and struck the unconscious Mr. Monroe with her shoe. The gun went off, striking the outside of Mr. Ward's thigh. Mrs. Ward was hit in the side of her face. Her eye is badly swollen. She may be disfigured. Ron breathed a sigh of relief. I can live with that. I hope she can too. May I ask why you're here, Mrs. Monroe? One of the detectives asked. I plan on living here temporarily while we finalize 2 divorces. So you and Mr. Ward are close too? Ron smiled and I replied, well, we're friends who were thrown together by spouses whose vows meant nothing. But for now, that's all we are. I think we both hope it can become something more, but time will tell. I couldn't have said it better myself, Ron repeated. He turned and looked at me, and for the first time I saw him as more than just the father of my daughter's friends. There were a few more questions, but in the end, none of the officers could figure out what crime we had conspired to commit. I advised this dumbass not to buy a gun. I even had a recording of that conversation. I also had a tape of our last argument. Apparently the knucklehead said I told him I'd be back, and that's why he pulled a gun. I didn't say anything like that. I think that dumbass's lies are what got him off our backs. Blended family, Ron Ward. We didn't make a big deal of it. We didn't have a plan. The night I kicked Maureen out, we decided it would be easiest for Sarah to spend time in the house. She spent a lot of time in hours. Shit. Not hours, not anymore. I looked at the clock. 8:30 in the morning. 8:30? I never sleep before 8:30. I got up, threw on my robe, and went downstairs. I was already halfway down the stairs when I smelled coffee and breakfast. Soon, 3 little voices giggled and began to enjoy their breakfast. I walked into the kitchen and saw Janet sitting with them with her back turned to me. Your mom's going to be gone for a while. Sometimes that happens. I know she still loves you both. What about me, Mommy? Sarah asked. Honey, this isn't about you and me. This is about Andrea and Ben and their mom and dad. She's not here right now. Andrea asked, Miss Janet, will you be here? Janet paused and I uttered, Good morning, everyone. I will try to answer your question, Andrea. Janet and Sarah will be staying here as our guests. We have not yet discussed how long they can stay. If Mom won't be here, she can stay and sleep with you to keep you company, Ben suggested. Well, maybe. We'll see. I looked at Janet, whose wide smile said she'd be happy to keep me company. I thought about Hurricane Katrina. If you lived anywhere in the world, it was a terrible disaster. But if you lived in the hurricane's path, the disaster was real. Somehow, talking about my mom not being home and Janet keeping me company took on the same meaning. My life was forever changed because of last night. Janet Monroe. Sarah was up early. We quickly found out that Andrea and Ben were up as well. We went downstairs to get breakfast. It was a little tricky, the kitchen wasn't very familiar to me, but I had spent time in this house at children's parties. We got along just fine. I pondered the legal issues facing Ron and me. Divorce, possibly criminal conspiracy charges, and most likely civil suits from a dumbass and a whore because of our revenge. Andrea asked why I was there, and out of nowhere, Ron rescued me. We got everyone fed, bathed, clothed, and housed in the family room, and then we started talking. Ron, have you contacted a lawyer? Several, but I can't pick one. I've hired Liz Hansen. She's exceptionally good. Why don't we use the same lawyer? There's likely to be a lot of legal hassles. Our interests are aligned. Let's pool resources. I'm lucky to have you here. What do you mean, a few hassles? Ron, the slut and the dumbass have already accused us of creating chaos and are probably going to sue. The DA may see this case as an opportunity to make a name for himself. Today, it is common in society not to charge a criminal with anything. It can be described as this: 2 people hopelessly in love, and their angry, jealous spouses who plot to have them maim each other. Oh my god, that sounds so true. I'm not in the mood for this. I hate to say it, but I'm disorganized and too often lost in my own world. I take care of my family. Ron fell silent, clearly concerned about his wife's situation and how it would affect his family. Ron, we're a good couple to go through this together. Don't worry about it. Ron straightened up. The tears never appeared. Speaking of which, why don't you move in here? The bedrooms at the end of the hallway share a bathroom. You can take the big one and Sarah and Andrea can take the other. Ben can take the room between your bedroom and mine. He won't mind going to the bathroom across the hall. You use this room for writing. The study in the foyer has always belonged to Maureen. You and I could share it. That would be perfect. I'd like that. I can help you, I know I can. But I need your support too. You're extraordinarily strong. You just don't know how strong. He smiled at me. The kind of half-smile that meant he appreciated my words, even though he thought they were lies. That pleased me. I knew he would see the truth in my words because I leaned on him for emotional support, and he was providing it. He knew the truth about what I needed and what he was giving me. He was the one who told me that the greatest gift you can receive is helping those you love. Suddenly, our lives became a support system for lawyers. I was filing for divorce from a dead man. Ron filed for divorce from whore 1. The whore was arrested for assault with intent to do grievous bodily harm. Slut 2 sued slut 1 for assault causing bodily injury and mental anguish. Dumbass sued whore 1 for his injuries. Turns out he is now impotent and unlikely to ever be able to get it up again. Dumbass and whore 2 filed several lawsuits against each other, but they were all eventually withdrawn. But we ended up doing what families do. What a day. I walked in the door, exhausted. I had spent 2 hours preparing with our attorney and another 2 hours interviewing several ADAs. I hate to say it, but better you than me. How'd it go? Ron smiled and handed me a vodka and lime tonic. I had a fight with Liz, mostly. She wanted me to gloss over the fact that we were trying to get a slut and a dumbass together. I told her there was too much evidence on the phones that we wanted them together. Our defense was that 2 people conspiring to bring 3 other people together was not conspiracy in any sense. The ADA had to agree. I think that part is behind us now. We've made a lot of progress here too. I've been watching them, they're confused. Sometimes the 2 older ones want to be together. Sometimes the 2 girls want it. But never brother and sister. Eventually, they figured it out and I got a chance to sit with the 3 of them and talk about love. Love? Not about arguments and fights. No, their problem is that 3 is not a good thing and they are in the worst of combinations. They just need to realize that since they love, they're going to get hurt sometimes and they need to learn how to express it without fighting. All the legal intricacies have been forgotten. I know he's doing this intentionally. Relationships are important. Family is important. The world doesn't run us in our home. But this is not our home. We are not a family. Whore 1 was eventually found guilty of assault, and because of the injuries to the deceased, she received 3 years in prison. Her behavior also ruined her chances for custody. A scar on her face and months of dealing with lawyers plunged her into depression. She didn't want to see or be seen. Dumbass had been shot in the left leg. He too was an embittered and broken man. The stun gun made him unable to get up, and it made him vindictive. The legal battle between him and whore 1 was epic. He managed to convince the jury that what she did to him was wrong, but in the end, they did not sympathize with him. He was only awarded $100,000. It turned out that in the divorce, I was able to convince the court that the jerk had spent too much of our joint assets on a bunch of lawsuits that were a direct result of his womanizing. Everything he had left, including $100,000 from whore 1, was awarded to me. The exchange of that money was the most satisfying of all. Ron wrote a check to whore 1. She wrote a check to dumbass. Dumbass wrote a check to me. It was a weird time. Ron is an incredible human being. He cares about people first and foremost. Of course, you could say everyone does, but he's not like that. I first noticed it in his attitude towards his kids. Ben and Sarah are only 3 months apart. Sarah and Andrea are girls. Ben and Andrea are brother and sister. Or to put it another way, they were 3 couples, each with a child. When I see the kids fighting, I find what they are fighting about and eliminate it. Ron sees what they need and goes beyond fighting and helps them grow closer to each other. It bothered me that Ron is building a family of 5 of us and there is no loving relationship between the adults. But I hoped they would appear. I couldn't understand why a man who empathizes so much with everyone else couldn't see my vibe. On the other hand, his heart had just been broken, and he was counting on me to help him with litigation strategy. There's little emotion in law, and none of that is going to help you win your case. Ron Ward. I started this story by talking about the best of times and the worst of times. This year, there were at least both. Janet and I never intended to be more than co-conspirators, certainly in a non-legal sense. But circumstances changed everything. 2 stay-at-home parents started living together. It was crazy for a while. Maureen and Luther turned on each other. The DA started going after us. The couple tried to play the victim and sued us. I couldn't have handled it. Janet did. Janet and I supported each other, and when things seemed bleak, we had 3 young people who were totally dependent on our help. Helping someone else is better than any other therapeutic process. My emotions ruled me. I had lost my wife, gained a child, and a new partner. I just couldn't see us as a couple. Instead, we were partners. The world was against us, and we joined forces to stand up to all comers. It was a time overflowing with emotion, and I think it consumed me. We went through all the divorce and civil proceedings, and all that was left was Maureen's criminal trial. Maureen was distraught and had nowhere to turn. It was during this period that I discovered that my love for her had died. I knew how she felt and what she needed, but I was not inclined to do any of it. I could read a stranger on the street and sympathize with him more than I could with Maureen. Her situation must have been distressing to me. The blow to her face left an eye slightly smaller than her right, and a noticeable scar on her cheek. Having lost everything, she was wallowing in self-pity. I had only one thought. There is supposed to be a special bond between children and their mother. Although outwardly Maureen was a good mother, both children quickly became attached to Janet. It was a more loving bond that the children felt immediately. But I knew my children needed a connection with their mother. I recorded a message for her from Ben and Andrea and made sure it was delivered while she was awaiting trial on a criminal case. She lived in a small apartment and continued to work. I was sure she would lose her job if she was convicted, but they were kind enough to keep her income. The only message I got from Maureen was a T after she got a message from her children. I'm sure it hurt her to see her kids happy without her, but I was only thinking of them. If Maureen was suffering, it was through no fault of her own. The legal hassles settled, and suddenly we were another family of 5. It hit me like a ton of bricks. We're not a family. Why hadn't that occurred to me before? After thinking about it for a while, I decided it was a self-defense mechanism. I could help myself by helping everyone through the crisis. I didn't have to think about my situation if I focused on others. It was now quite obvious that Janet had real feelings for me. I knew it, and simply refused to accept it. Like I would explain to her that I had fallen in love with her, but wouldn't act on my feelings because I refused to deal with them. I was at a loss trying to decide how and when to tell her about it. And lo and behold, not a day later I was already at her house. "What's wrong, Ron?" Janet asked, holding my hand. "With me or with us? Take your pick." There was confidence and a slight playfulness in her eyes. "Why does something have to be wrong? We sleep in separate bedrooms and fantasize about sleeping in the same bedroom. Do you do that too?" We didn't do that after that. I was amazed. I don't know how many women I've had, maybe 10? 4 in serious relationships and maybe half a dozen one-night stands. Sex with the first partner is always better. Even if you think you're in love, your first time is more of a biological feeling than an emotional one. It wasn't like that with Janet. Well, not really. It was more than just a connection, a hope for more. We were in love and had been waiting for it for much longer than people our age. I wondered if my grandparents or their parents had felt that kind of closeness when they finally cemented their love. I did love Maureen, or at least believed I loved her, but I never had the connection with her that Janet and I had that first time and all the times that followed. Nerd that I am, I wondered if I could write about such emotions and convey them in a way that people could understand. Who thinks about such things? I chuckled to myself. I'm not good enough to be that stupid. I moved away and left no address. Our life together didn't start from the first chapter. It's not as easy as you think. Janet and I ended up laughing about it. Any normal life involves meeting, dating, falling in love, getting married, defining your dreams and starting to realize them. Dreams can include careers and children. We were dating, dreaming of kids, planning the end of failed marriages, getting to know each other and living the dream before we even talked about getting married. But things just kept getting better and better. Janet told me we were having our first or fourth child, depending on how you count. I had never been happier. We were settling in, and life was good. Maureen got out of prison and moved on with her life. We hadn't heard from her and had no idea how to contact her. I felt like I should have sympathized with her or our kids or something, but I didn't. Janet was having problems with her previous and future employer. They had an opening and were preparing her for it, but she wanted to go on maternity leave. She came back and worked until she gave birth, so it seemed to me. But her purpose changed. She no longer wanted or needed a big job. She spent time training her replacement. She negotiated a return to a smaller position. Who does that? I found out about her planned demotion one night after dinner. We were enjoying 3 children and waiting for the 4th while she explained what was going on. The supervisor got flustered and asked why I wanted to take a leave of absence and then go back to a lesser position. Do you know what I answered her? No, I'm almost afraid to ask. At those words, a gleam appeared in my eyes. I told her I wanted to take a vacation because life is beautiful, you have to get it. I suppose it's not so important to you whether you stay at work. Not at all, she replied. It suits her, because it will give her what only I can give her, my absence. Then we both laughed. I continued to write and the books continued to sell. We spent most of our time together. Our child was named Jonathan, after Janet's father. Both of her parents had died relatively young, and she spoke of them often. She claimed it was her father who taught her sarcastic humor. As the years passed, our love grew. I grew tired of my spy books. I tried to write an autobiography, calling it Chapter 6, because our romance began in the middle. Janet once told me, "It's bad enough we started in the middle, now we're living in the past and present." Working on the book was difficult and time-consuming. Luckily, a dozen bestsellers meant I had plenty of time to sort it out. One of the difficulties was explaining to the 4 siblings that 3 of them weren't actually related. They were very young when it all happened, and Maureen and Luther had disappeared, so they were all adopted and had the same last name. No one ever realized they weren't siblings. The children do reflect their parents. The girls are more mature, much younger than the boys. Janet and I wondered if it would be better to hold off on finishing Chapter 6. It might come as a shock to the teens to find out their true relationship. Ben once asked why he was only 3 months older than his 13-year-old sister. Her answer was priceless. Said, "I don't have the time or pencils to explain it to you." Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Subscribe to my channel and watch for the next video.